Hey everybody! I know it's been a while since I posted the last video. Had to get a new phone and then things have just been backed up. So I am finally getting around to talking about the next thing. Oh, it said underwater video on. Still getting used to the settings on the phone. I guess that's in case I start rippling. I think I need to turn that off unless I decide to go scuba diving. But at any rate, one of the things that there's all sorts of topics we can talk about, and I'm trying to be in the mindset, Catfer, in the mindset of, well, we're talking about everything that we hate that's going on, everything that we've been dreading, all of this kind of stuff. Part of this video series is, okay, so what's the solutions? So I started off talking about how if I were president, I'd make sure that I have representation on both sides of the aisle in my cabinet and those around me, that sort of thing. We just had Cory Booker do his filibuster on the Senate floor. Trump has announced what his tariffs are going to be. Of course, he waited until after the stock market closed because he didn't want everybody to see it plummet because he lied. I think everybody but his worshipers believe that tariffs, if not used strategically, can only hurt us. And we're getting ready to prove that, unfortunately. But I get sidetracked easily. See, you'd have a field day with me if you're looking for sound bites and all that kind of stuff. I say what I'm thinking. I don't always speak clearly. Sometimes it's because of the dyslexia, but sometimes it's because I just squirrel. So you can get sound bites easily off of me. At any rate, both sides of the aisle, including the middle of the aisle, and having independence and all of that around me as well. So who would I have? Well, my first pick I would have to figure out would be vice president. And that person needs to be somebody that should something happen to the president, me in this case, that person would hopefully be able to step right in, keep things moving, keep the agenda that I campaigned on going, all that kind of stuff. And then when they run their own campaign, they can have whatever agenda they want. Hopefully we collab on it a little bit. So hopefully there's a cohesive agenda. But the VP is somebody who not only sits over I know it's one part of, is it both parts of the Congress or just the Senate? I think it's just the Senate that they oversee. The VP is the tiebreaker. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. The other thing that they do, other than projects here and there at the request of the president or, circumstances that might pop up and that sort of thing, the VP also needs to be able to step in and be president if something should happen. I have voted in primaries for this person to be the presidential candidate. I think they would make an excellent president. Do they have a spotless record? No. They do have issues in their past that haven't always looked great. I recognize that, but the person is well spoken, well respected, does the jobs that they're requested to do well, for the most part, overall, and knows how to speak with those who may be on the opposite side, the oppo. The person that, if I were to be president, that I would want to be my VP would be Pete Buttigieg. He's smart, well-spoken, can handle scrutiny, but can also is quick thinking and can respond quickly and knows their facts, at least on the stuff that I've followed. He has been accurate with his counterpoints to some of the interviews he's been in and that sort of thing. So if he would be my VP, I would have him on my ticket with me. So then the other people that I would want around me, one of the people I would need to consider is the position of Chief of Staff. Chief of Staff needs to be somebody who is very good at time management, organizational skills, but also who they talk with and advice that they're giving and stuff like that. Now, do I have to follow everything that this person says? No. But I would want it to be somebody that I respect and that I could trust to not only hopefully help me with my agenda, but also be somebody who can play counterpoint or devil's advocate or whatever you want to call it. All through school, high school, college, I love playing devil's advocate. It's great. It's good to get used to arguing the opposite side of things or things you hadn't considered, stuff like that. And so playing devil's advocate helps get you prepared for that. The cat. But it needs to be also somebody who is not going to say yes to me for everything. We don't need a yes man as the Chief of Staff. We don't need a yes man in the VP either. And I think Pete Buttigieg would let me know what he does and does not agree with and all that. But my Chief of Staff, I don't know who would be best suited for that. I do know lots of people who are very organized. That's JoJo. So I do know folks who are very organized, and it would need to be somebody that can do that, but also smart in other areas. I don't know who in the national realm I could put that upon. If I had to pick somebody right today that I know that I can trust, but whose organizational skills are good and, you know, all this kind of stuff, it may be one of my coworkers, and Zenaida comes to mind. Very organized, color-coded, all that kind of stuff. Now, would she want to do this sort of thing? I don't know. But she's like me in that she likes to plan things out. So it might be a good fit. So that's who I'd pick. I'm not giving a last name. Sorry, folks. If my personal life becomes public, to the point of running or something like that, seriously considering running, then I'll give full names and everything after talking with them and getting permission and all of that. But right now, all you get is her first name. Other people that I'd want around me, and I don't know necessarily what positions I would put them in, but that I know that I would at least want in the realm of working with me. And I'm going to name some folks on the opposite side of the aisle. which are Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and Mitt Romney. I might even consider like, oh, the name's blanking on me right now. Langford. Senator Langford. Is it Scott? I did know it. I might even consider him. I know he's very conservative. We might need that as far as a balance, right? So he doesn't seem like, I haven't followed, I almost had the first name. I think it's Scott Langford though. I haven't followed him closely, but he so far in some of his presentation seems to be a reasonable human being. What all he's voted for, that's a whole nother issue. The fact that he's not standing up to some of the stuff that Trump is doing and keeping him in check and keeping him in balance is kind of off-putting. But yeah, the reason why I bring him up is because even though the immigration bill that he worked on along with other senators, both sides of the aisle, even though it wasn't exactly what he wanted and it wasn't exactly what the Dems wanted, in fact, it leaned very conservative, he still had the respect of the other senators for that bill up until a certain someone said, you know what? Adam Kinzinger, I haven't agreed with everything that he has voted on, but I have been following him ever since the January 6th stuff, and he seems very level-headed, very smart about things, seems to have the same goals, right? Not necessarily the same method on how we get to those goals. But he has a lot of respect from people around him. And so, yeah, I would want him to be part of the team. Liz Cheney, same thing. I don't necessarily agree with everything that she's voted on. In fact, most of what she's voted on. But she does want what's best for the country, and she's not afraid to speak her mind. And you need people like that around you who are going to fight for the people in their areas and do what is the right thing ultimately. Mitt Romney, same thing. He's a little more milder on the Republican side as far as views and everything. He's had some things I've agreed with, some things I haven't, but very well respected overall. So those are some names on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, I have a lot of respect for several of them, actually. Like I said on the first video, I do lean left, and so the path on how I would get to certain things lines up with that side more. But AOC, a lot of respect for her. Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Adam Schiff, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, all of them have a lot of respect from their colleagues. I was trying to think of other Republican names, and right now I'm kind of petering on it as far as nationally known. Now, I've got some Republican friends who I'd invite to the team, but it's not about promoting your friends necessarily, right? We don't want it to be a friend version of nepotism, right? So there's definitely some viewpoints that if worse came to worse case scenario is out there, I know I could call on some of my Republican friends and say, hey, tell me what you think about this or about that, or, you know, what do you hear in your circles, you know, that kind of stuff. And Bernie, I put on the left side, he's technically an independent though. I don't know a lot of other independents. I used to vote almost purely third party before 2016. 2016 and on, I've voted left because I watched Trump back before he got into politics and I did not like him. So I knew I would not like him as a politician. So third party, you know, some of the people I liked, Ralph Nader. I know Jill Stein gets a lot of respect from the Green Party, I think is who she's a part of. I was trying to think of some others in that realm that are living. And I'm not sure. Yeah, the independent lane is a little harder because the independents don't get a lot of media attention. And that's another issue we'll eventually talk about. But yeah, those are just some names that I would start filling in spots with. Of course, picking ones who are appropriate for this spot or that spot, right? We want them to have the minimum qualifications for this job or that job. So yeah, I'm not going to put somebody in the cabinet because they contributed so many millions of dollars to my campaign. That's how we get what we've got right now. We don't need that. Yeah, those are just some names of who I would call upon. Whether they would accept or not, it's a whole nother issue. But those are some names I would throw out there to try to have some balance to the administration, and then hopefully that trickles down from there. But I don't know all these national names that are necessarily out there. So who would you guys pick for Secretary of Transportation? Who would you pick for your Secretary of Defense? Who would you pick for Secretary? Isn't there like Secretary of Commerce? Something like Secretary of Education. Who would you call upon? I know somebody who is currently with the community colleges, started off in the local school system, that I would feel comfortable with. Now, there's actually two I would feel comfortable with. I don't know the necessary history on the one. They are family. Long lost family, but they are family. But I do know like some people, but I don't want them all to come from the same area either. We need some diversity, right? We need to spread the love. So who would you have for Secretary of Education? Who would you have for Secretary of Agriculture? Is it oh, let me pull up the list. Okay. Secretary of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Education, Energy. I left that one out. Health and Human Services, duh. How can I forget that one? I work in that field. So I have some ideas on the Department of Health and Human Services, although my picks are probably not the most qualifying ones. So I would want the most qualified ones. Homeland Security, Housing, Urban Development. Who would you pick? Interior. I think Deb, is it Holland? Haal. I can't remember the rest of how her last name is spelled. I think she did a good job, though. Secretary of Labor, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury. Those are different things. I don't have my glasses on because you can see the big ring light. So those things, as well as U.S. Attorney General. I just spit, sorry. U.S. Attorney General. So there are some picks for U.S. Attorney General. The one I paid the most attention to was Merrick Garland, and I heard both sides of the arguments from both sides of the aisle. There were Dems that weren't happy with him. There were Republicans that, of course, weren't happy with him. And then you had those who were happy with him and the other side who were happy with him. So, he didn't do some of the stuff that I thought would be appropriate. And so I would want somebody who is a little more, I don't want to say outspoken, because you don't want them to say more than they should, especially for current investigations and all of that. But somebody who is a little more loud, would that be a good way to say it? A little more loud, a little more firm in the authority of their voice, that kind of thing. Merrick seemed like a nice man who knew his stuff. I just didn't agree with his reasoning on everything that he did. So who would you have for U.S. Attorney General? I know who I picked, but I don't think she has any federal history. So, again, I don't think she's the most qualified. And knowing her, and she is a Republican, by the way, knowing her, I think she would say no, because she doesn't have the federal experience, and would say that, that's an important part of it. So, yeah. Let me know below, who would you pick for what positions? If you got a choice, who would you nominate? And, yeah, let's talk about who our cabinet would be. Who are we going to surround ourselves with? Who's going to be our VP? Who's going to be our chief of staff? All right. Down below. Thank y'all.